Hello and welcome back everyone. Today I'm going to start doing some deeper dives into what all of the allegiances offer in-game. I'll start with the two allegiances in the starter box, since they're both smaller than the others, and also because they're both syndicates, so really every player should be grabbing them at some point. This week I'll cover the spookiest allegiance, the Court of Two. I'll also cover all of the generic Malifaux assets and stratagems while I'm at it. I'll start off by quickly covering an important ability that shows up on a couple of their units, Revenge. This lets you auto-hit an enemy fire team who dares to make a nearby friendly suffer a hit, including themselves. It's only a strength 2 hit, and you can't cheat it, but that's probably fair since it auto-hits. An important thing to note is that it happens after resolving the action, so it doesn't work if the fire team with Revenge died during the action. This makes area attacks a big threat to this allegiance's game plan. The Court's Allegiance card gives them some really interesting tools to work with. I'm going to cover the first ability on the card last, since the others all feed into it. Ghostly lets any court fire teams discard a crow to prevent all damage from one source. This makes every crow in your deck extremely valuable to keep in your hand. Having your opponent go all in trying to kill a fire team, only for you to drop a crow and deny them at the right time, can be game-changing. Join Them is another really strong passive effect. This lets you give a reinforcement token to any court unit anytime a non-court fire team is killed, friendly or enemy. With this, you should have no problem reinforcing tons of your ghosts. Funnily enough, this is at its weakest when you're running a pure court company, since you won't have any friendly non-court fire teams you can feed into this. Fade Away is an interesting one. It lets you kill one of your court fire teams in the upkeep step to give a different court unit a reinforcement token. You also get a tactics token for doing this. This really fits into the expendable theme their squads have going on, and also means that you can sacrifice fire teams in an area where they're less needed to strengthen those in a more contested area. Okay, now back to the top for Spiritual Pressure. This lets court units discard 2 reinforcement tokens when they activate to flip to glory. For any other allegiance, this would be a huge cost, but Join Them, Fade Away, and their commander makes this pretty easy. Remember that taking orders happens after start of turn effects, so you do need to actually start their activation with the tokens already on them. So let's talk about the court's only commander currently, Kirai Ankoku. She's on a 40 mil base, is a champion, and comes with her own special combined arms fire team, Ikiryo, who I'll cover next. It's very important to note that they are not a squad. This means that they don't have to stay in cohesion, but also she can't reinforce Ikiryo back. Or I would say that, if her personal asset didn't directly fix that problem. It does mean that you need to keep this asset repaired if you want to bring Ikiryo back though. Kirai's stats are pretty low across the board for a commander. She has Revenge though, which is great on a champion since you want her to be near your other units anyways. Her only offensive action, Sundering, isn't anything special, but it's better than nothing. If you're relying on this, you might already be in trouble, though. Her morale action, Spirit Anchor, on the other hand, is absolutely incredible. Pulsing out reinforcement tokens and immediately reinforcing all court units in 6 inches can be game-changing, especially since she can do this twice per activation. Sadly, it's only other units, so it doesn't affect herself, but it at least has a trigger to give herself a reinforcement token. In Glory, she gets another amazing action, Blood and Wind. This lets you spend reinforcement and tactics tokens to summon in brand new court squads. It's not a morale action, probably because being able to do this twice per activation would be a bit much. Kirai's other self, Ikiryo, is pretty much her complete opposite. Where Kirai is all about team support, Ikiryo's here for murder. She's on an 80 mil base, with middling AVs, but that doesn't matter too much since Kirai can usually reinforce her back anyways. Like Kirai, she has Revenge. Her other basic ability, Kirai's Soul, just removes Ikiryo if Kirai is dead, since she's basically being projected from her. Her melee action is really good, with base strength 3 and piercing, giving you really good odds of doing some beefy damage. Her other action, Walk Through the Other World, lets her move through terrain and other fire teams with a speed boost. This helps compensate for the fact that, as a unit, you almost never want to take the rush order since Kirai barely benefits from it herself. You might be asking, but when would I ever use that as Ikiryo's only action? Well, in Glory, she gets the ability Essence of the Soul, which lets her take an extra action. So you can take the advance order, have Ikiryo move 5 inches, use Walk to move another 7 inches, and then attack your target. Or if you're already in range, attack the enemy twice. Just remember that the advance order lets you take all of a fire team's actions before or after the move. You can't have the same fire team act, move, and then act again. So you can take the advance order, have Ikiryo move 5 inches, then use Walk to move another 7 inches through obstacles, then attack your target within 2 inches of where she ends up. But you can't use Walk, then take your order movement, and then attack after. Kirai also has access to the generic Malifaux commander assets. I'll cover these in depth here, and in later Malifaux-sided allegiances, I'll just point out any notable synergies. To start, the unique one is Unnatural Growth. This forces your opponent to show you what cards they draw during the activation phase, and lets you hand out free Shaken tokens sometimes. It's nice for when you know your opponent will have lots of card draw, such as versus Abyssinia. Grimoire of Prestidigitation, and say that 5 times fast, lets you swap out one low to mid cost squad for another during the scouting step. This doesn't matter so much for the court since they have so few options, but it gives bigger allegiances a way to tweak their list a little after seeing what their opponent is bringing. Relics of Ancient Malifaux gives you a long-range magic action that gives a reinforcement token to the target and reinforces it. The court doesn't care too much about this since Kirai has a better, albeit shorter range version, but is great with the other allegiances. Lastly, their 2 script option is Uncanny Instincts. This gives 2 abilities and both are great. Cunning lets you draw a card when you activate, and you can discard that card to draw another for twice the chance of drawing something good. Inhuman Reflexes lets you break the core rule that says attackers always modify first, letting you modify second instead. This turns Ikiryo into a terrifying threat, as your opponent doesn't know what they need to spend to stop her from killing them. That's it for commander stuff. Now let's talk hireable units. And what a way to start with the amazing Binh Nguyen. 3 script for a single model is pretty pricey, but he's one of the rare non-commanders who has a Tactics AV. He comes on a 40 mil base, and his defensive stats are just okay, but since he's a champion, he can stay alive for a good long while. His purpose in your list is as a force amplifier. His ability Spirit Lantern lets him borrow any nearby court unit's actions, so everything I just said about Kirai and Ikiryo's actions, he can borrow any of them. His own actions are pretty good too. Shred Soul's base strength of 4 is great, and when he's in Glory, it's probably the best action to use the Red Joker on, with how its triggers the Haunting and the Sorrow of Death pair together. His other action, Deafening Shriek, forces a duel against all nearby enemy non-court fire teams, and it also has a beefy strength 4. Funnily enough, it only affects enemy non-court units, so in a mirror match, this doesn't do anything. The court doesn't have any generic commander assets, but the one champion one it has is incredible. Remember, Kirai and Binh can both take this. Intimist is really valuable to the court because it doubles the number of cards you can discard to use Ghostly, making it way more likely you can just ignore a big hit. You can also use it to make crow triggers more likely to happen too. The court only has 1 unit with no special unit rules, the Yaksha. They cost 2 script for a single 80 mil fire team with 3 models. They have really low speed, but their ability Nature Spirit lets you not deploy them at the start of the game, and lets them teleport anywhere that's touching terrain. They're also immune to Hazardous, which is very important since their other ability, Awaken the Land, gives any terrain they're touching the Hazardous 2 trait, which can be super powerful depending on the board setup. Their only action is okay normally, but gets really nice in Glory, going to AV7 and getting a trigger to move the target, potentially making them move through that hazardous terrain for more damage. Overall, they're good, cheap hires for board control, making chunks of the board unsafe for your opponent. The Yaksha, along with Kirai and Binh, have 2 generic Malifaux assets they can equip. The first, Icon of Ancient Power, gives 2 abilities not only to itself, but to all friendlies within 8 inches. Unstoppable and Unshakable are basically the same, both letting you discard a card to remove pinned or shaken tokens respectively when the affected unit activates. The last one, Toughness, is the discount asset, for when you just need to fill asset slots. The only ability it has just gives you a second copy of Toughness for free. Alright, time for squads. Remember, these are both summonable by Kirai. The first, Enslaved Spirits, is the epitome of cannon fodder. 5 script for 3 80 mil fire teams with 3 models each is a good amount of health for their price, but their armor is really bad. Their ability Chained lets champions pass off damage to them from further away. This is an effect that matters more when they're hired outside of the court though, since Kirai really wants them to be within 3 inches most of the time to take advantage of revenge. Both of their actions are offensive, with good strength for their cost, but can struggle to hit. Both get a built-in trigger in Glory, which are really good in different ways. Their melee action's Expendable trigger kills the attacking fire team to give you a card and a tactics token, both really nice. And Lethal Curse's Doomed trigger lets you spend their reinforcement tokens to boost the action's strength. Only AV4 is pretty bad, but potentially Strength 4 on such a cheap unit is fantastic. Lastly, the Gwisin. 4 script gets you 3 40 mil fire teams with just 1 model each. These gory ghosts are independent, so they don't have to stay in cohesion, and they have revenge. However, with only armor 5 and 1 model per fire team, area attacks are really likely to kill them before revenge goes off. Their melee action is a bit unusual, as is versus willpower, and it does more damage depending on what turn it is. Having access to strength 5 hits later on is really nice, especially when Binh can borrow this too. In Glory, they also get Haunting to hand out some punishing tokens too if you don't want to get them up in melee range. While the court doesn't have their own adjunct, they do have access to the generic Malifaux one. It's a combined arms fire team, but if it dies, it can't be reinforced back. To help with that risk, it has Escort, which lets it pass off damage it takes to other members of its unit. The icon of the First World itself is a 50 mil fire team with good armor but bad defense. Its ability Scourge Bearers is a resource multiplier. When its unit gains a token, it can make another unit near the icon gain the same token, friendly or enemy. Their only action is Archaic Worship. It moves the enemy a small distance and makes them gain a token of your choice. While it can't do damage on its own, it can in Glory with its ability Inhospitable Domain, making enemies treat the area and aura 2 around the icon as hazardous 1. In the court, it can be nice to help pass even more reinforcement tokens around, and it can make a durable 4th fire team that you can reinforce their squad mates back from. Alright, time for the Stratagem Lightning Round. Anchored Reality is their expensive one, letting you save spent reinforcement tokens and get them back later. Call to the Wind is basically Kirai's Blood and Wind ability on demand. Calm Spirit lets you spend a unit's glory to get reinforcement tokens and reinforce, which is a great way to keep someone alive, plus is reusable. Final Vengeance lets you kill a friendly fire team to auto-hit nearby enemies and give reinforcement tokens to nearby friendlies in a pretty big range. It's expensive, but you can keep it if you discard a card. Right behind you lets you teleport a unit into base contact with an enemy, letting you get at the enemy's backline support. Undying Assault lets you spend a unit's reinforcement tokens to take up to 2 extra actions, which can be game-changing if used on a strong unit like Kirai or Binh at the right time. There's 6 generic Malifaux Stratagems to choose from too. Disorienting Spell does 2 things. First, it forces your opponent to pass their next activation. Second, when they do actually get to activate, it prevents them from using an order of your choice. Domination gives you a VP when you kill an enemy unit. The Fear Behind Their Eyes gives all enemy units that are engaged a Shaken token. Reveal the Horrifying Truth gives any 3 units a Shaken token, and flips any of them out of glory if they're fully on your table half. Spontaneous Healing lets you repair an asset. Lastly, Unchecked Magic lets a squad fire team take an action, and you can discard a card to have a different squad also do this, spending as many cards as you want until you're out of cards or out of unchosen squads. One last thing I'd like to cover, and that's where to start if you want to play as the court. They come in the starter box, which gives you Kirai and Ikiryo, and a unit each of Enslaved Spirits and Gwisin. If you want to play a full one-commander game as the court, you do need to pick up a few more things, since the starter box is mostly just a teaching tool. If you grab Binh and some Yaksha, you'll have enough for a full one-commander company, like this quick list I've put up on the screen now. And that's it. That's the whole Allegiance and all of the generic Malifaux assets and stratagems. Since they're a syndicate, they don't have a lot of hiring options, but what they have all works together pretty nicely. Plus, they're all hireable into every Malifaux Allegiance, so they're a strong jumping-off point if you're not sure which Allegiance you want to get into. Next week, I'll talk about the other starter box Allegiance, the Guild. Until then, happy gaming!